Hello and welcome again to the Mud Pie. We continue our study in the book of Psalms, and today we come to Psalm 9. I begin reading and go down through verse 2, including the preface. Verse 1, to the chief musician upon Muthlabin, a psalm of David. I will praise thee, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will show forth all thy marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in thee. I will sing praise to thy name, O thou Most High. Notice that the heart and the mouth, verse 1, should match. When the whole heart praises God, it will, quote, show forth, end quote. You might want to study Romans chapter 10, the verses 9 and 10 in this regard. The object of the rejoicing is, O thou Most High, verse 2. The source of this joy is gladness, and the location of the rejoicing is in thee. The word Muthlabin in the preface is said to, in one version of the LXX, to mean the death of a champion. Verse 3, and we'll read down through verse 6. When mine enemies are turned back, they shall fall and perish at thy presence. For thou hast maintained my right and my cause. Thou sattest in the throne, judging right. Thou hast rebuked the heathen, thou hast destroyed the wicked. Thou hast put out their name forever and ever. O thou enemy, destructions are come to a perpetual end, and thou hast destroyed cities, their memorial is perished with them. The entire passage, doctrinally, takes place literally at the second advent. One can apply verse 3 to the garden scene, John chapter 8, verse 6. However, it cannot follow through, for no one perished at his presence in the garden. My right and my cause in verse 4 is David's right and cause, Israel's right and cause, and Jesus Christ's right and cause. Notice that David is so closely associated with God's real Son that he often speaks for him. And he speaks in the first person. Psalm 22, verse 16, verse 18. Psalm chapter 16, verse 10. When nothing said is true of himself. The words, thou hast rebuked the heathen. Well, not yet. Thou hast destroyed the wicked. Not in the absolute sense. Wicked men have been destroyed in times past, but the wicked here is the wicked of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 8. Nobody's name gets put out forever and ever, verse 5, until the end of the millennium. The enemy's destructions did not come to a perpetual end in David's day or Zedekiah's day, Paul's day, or any other day. It is Abaddon, the destroyer, see Revelation 9 verse 11, whose destructions come to an end. Study Isaiah 14, the verses 5 through 7, and this comes to an end in Revelation 20 and verse 10. My right and my cause is the right of Jesus Christ and his cause. They have nothing to do with civil rights, human rights, social rights, or causes like pro-life, pro-choice, prohibition, repeal of prohibition, genocide treaties, and the like. Nothing to do with it at all. Verse 7. But the Lord shall endure forever. He hath prepared his throne for judgment, and he shall judge the world in righteousness. He shall minister judgment to the people in uprightness. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in time or times of trouble. And they that know thy name will put their trust in thee. For thou, O Lord, hast not forsaken them that seek thee. God does not begin to judge the world in righteousness until he is here upon the throne of his glory. See Matthew 25, verse 31, which is defined, if you're interested, in Jeremiah as David's throne. Jeremiah 13, verse 13, Jeremiah 14, verse 21. The exact throne promised to Jesus Christ in Luke's Gospel, chapter 1, the verses 30 through 34, when the Lord reigns, Psalm 72, verse 11, verse 17, verse 19, is when he will judge the world in righteousness. See Psalm 72, the verses 2 and 4, and not before then. The poor and needy that are mentioned here, see Psalm 72, verse 13. The poor and needy will be killed right and left during the time of Jacob's trouble. See Jeremiah 30, verse 7. Verse 7 is predictive. Verse 8 is predictive. Verse 9 is predictive and will have a literal application to the refugees who flee Jerusalem for the mountains. See Matthew 24, verse 16. There can be no doubt about the place of their refuge here on earth, for look what happens in verse 16. And now look at that word, Selah. Selah, there we have it again, and the judgment of the nations. Matthew 25, the verses 31 through 38, right beside it, see verse 17. Now we come to verse 10, and verse 10 has a direct application to Hosea chapter 6, the verses 1 and 2. Come and let us return unto the Lord, for he hath torn, and he will heal us. He hath smitten, and he will bind us up. After 2 days will he revive us, and the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Now, spiritually, we can say the Lord's name, verse 5, and his memorial, verse 6, will endure because he endures, verse 7. Is God's judgment of the world in error now? He calls it this present evil world, Galatians chapter 1, verse 4. He says everything in it is foreign to him, and that it is against him, and he is against it. See John chapter 17, the verses 14 through 16. Is that your judgment? Someone is in error. Who could it be? In verse 1, it is apparent that once you know his name, you know who to trust. Psalm 118, verse 8. The only sure trustworthy one is him, capital H-I-M. If you seek him, you will come to know his name, verse 10. And when you do, you will cease to trust in any other name. See Psalm 86, verse 2. Now we come to verse 11. Sing praises to the Lord, which dwelleth in Zion. Declare among the people his doings. When he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them. He forgetteth not the cry of the humble. Have mercy upon me, O Lord. Consider my trouble which I suffer of them that hate me. Thou that liftest me up from the gates of death, that I may show forth all thy praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in thy salvation. Verse 11 can mean now in the sense of Colossians 3, verse 16. But it is not literal until Isaiah chapter 2 and Malachi chapter 1, verse 11. Verse 12 again, when he maketh inquisition for blood, he remembereth them, he forgetteth not the cry of the humble. The inquisition for blood is the case of God going after Cain for murder and God going after Ahab for murder, 1 Kings 21:19. Inquisition has to be made because when blood defiles a piece of land, it cannot be cleansed of the innocent blood until Deuteronomy 21, verse 8, at which time the blood of well over 10 million Jews will have already been shed to retaliate for crying, his blood be on us and on our children. See Matthew 27, verse 25. Rome is the self-appointed volunteer for the mission, for the Jews had said, "We have no king but Caesar." John 19, verse 15. God gave them their request exactly as he did when they chose Saul. See 1 Samuel chapter 8, the verses 7 through 22. In this case, the Roman Catholic Church plays Cain's part and Ahab's part to the hilt. That is why they chose the term inquisition. They pretended they were the God of Psalm 9, verse 12. However, as Cain trusted his works and lied about his brother, they trusted their works for salvation and lied about their brother. As Ahab worshiped Balaam, 1 Kings 18, verse 8, they worshiped the Queen of Heaven, wearing vestments, doing penance by mutilation, and adoring a sun god, Baal, symbolized by a circular collar and a fake wafer that they call manna. The inquisition for blood here is located exactly by the Holy Spirit in Revelation 6, the verses 10 and 11, and is approved of in Revelation 16, verse 6. I want you to compare Psalm 10, verse 12, and Psalm 86, verse 2, with verse 12 of this psalm. Verse 13 is appropriate for any saint in any age who is about to die or be killed, especially when the calamity is the result of persecution, which suffer of them that hate me. David is saying, let me live so I can praise God. Verse 14. The daughter of Zion is usually a reference to the generation of Israelites who will survive the tribulation. I hope you'll mark that down in your notes. I want to repeat it. The daughter of Zion is usually a reference to the generation of Israelites who will survive the tribulation. Notice how the Lord uses this expression when one of the greatest types of the son of perdition is at the gates of Jerusalem. 2 Kings chapter 19, verse 21, and Zechariah chapter 2, verse 10, and Zechariah chapter 9, verse 9. It is also mentioned in a tribulation context in Lamentations chapter 2, the verses 1 through 18. Back to our psalm and verse 15. The heathen are sunk down in the pit that they made. In the net which they hid is their own foot taken. The Lord is known by the judgment which he executeth. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Higgaion, Selah. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, let not man prevail. Let the heathen be judged in thy sight. Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. Selah. All 6 verses are about the second advent. The heathen have been trapped by their own trap. This is what we might call a lion's trap from Africa. It's a net over a pit into which the lion falls. The net is tied to a tree, which causes it to close over the lion when he falls into the pit. The lion is identified in Jeremiah 50, verse 17, Revelation 13, verse 2, and 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. His lions, plural, are the heathen, from verse 15. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 8 is an exact description, and so is Romans chapter 11, verse 9. The drunkard becomes a slave of his drink. The adulterer and fornicator is controlled by his lusts, and eventually they destroy him. The extortionist will wind up having someone strip him threadbare, and the unbelief of the Bible rejecter finishes him off. You are to meditate, that's the word Higgaion, on that truth. See Psalm 19, verse 14, and Psalm 92, verse 3. The wicked shall be turned into hell. Well, I don't laugh at that saying, but I do laugh that it's not so in the NIV, the New International Version, not in an RV, not in an RSV, not in an NASV, not in a New King James Version, not in the German Schlachter of 2000. No, you see, it is in a perennial Jehovah's Witness lie taught by all Greek and Hebrew scholars that the AV is misleading. So, to mislead you further, no modern scholar attempts to translate the word Hades or the word Sheol. The King James is right. It is hell, Hell, in capital letters. And all the nations that forget God, they all go. It would be blasphemy to call the USA a Christian nation or any nation in Europe. It still has the largest number of Christian people in the world left in it, but these people have been so divided by Christian education over final authority and so fragmented with conflicting authorities that most of them are nothing but pragmatic humanists. Hell, Hell, all the nations that forget God, all, All means all. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Proverbs 14, verse 34. Verse 18 goes with Jeremiah 31, verse 7, and Psalm 74, verse 19. The expectation of those in the tribulation who cannot buy or sell, see Revelation 13, the verses 17 through 18, the expectation is the second coming. Hence we see again the words, "Arise, O Lord," in verse 19. The truth is that the answer to one prayer will overthrow all scientific achievement and human progress made between 4000 BC and today. The Lord is returning. He will arise. And when he does, down he will come. See Joel chapter 3, verse 13, Revelation 14, verse 20, Revelation 19, verse 15. And when he comes back, when he does arise, he will undo what it took man 6 millenniums to do. It says 13 times that he will arise. See Psalm 7, verse 6, Psalm 10, verse 12, Psalm 17, verse 13, Psalm 44, verse 23, and so forth and so on. The heathen will be judged, verse 19, in the valley of Jehoshaphat, Joel chapter 3, verse 12, and some of them will wind up in the lake of fire, Matthew 25 and verse 46.